In terms of the practices, it's quite varied, but I would highlight a couple of sort of big themes. And we have got examples of some of the more extreme physical intimidation and violence on the streets of the UK. There was a 2018 case of a Saudi activist who was attacked by two men, and in that case, a High Court judge effectively has clarified that yes, this does look to be linked to a state. He found that so in a civil case that was around hacking, and the other aspect that I would highlight of actions actually taking place on UK soil is the digital surveillance, and I know we may talk about that in more detail, but I would want to highlight how these two are linked. So there is some evidence that when there have been incidents where people are being tracked physically or have had some kind of intimidation physically, they may have been under digital surveillance at the same time. And I think one of the trends I notice with this transnational repression generally is that a lot of the kind of common practices are linked. People are often facing many of these practices at once. So there are activities by these states on UK soil, definitely within UK jurisdiction. However, I would say the majority of the cases that I've looked at, you're seeing people within the UK, resident in the UK, sometimes UK nationals, facing what I would sort of say remote transnational repression, in the sense that the activities are primarily taking place in the repressive state itself, in the repressing state. So people, for example, in the UK, having baseless court cases against them, being designated terrorists, with all sorts of effects on their lives, on their reputation, their ability to bank, for example. I've heard of somebody being debanked, an Egyptian, because of a court case against him. Being unable to travel through potential fear of arrest when they travel. People having their relatives targeted for arrest or put under travel ban because of what they do here in the UK. We've had cases like that in Bahrain and in Egypt. People having their citizenship stripped and then unable to pass any citizenship on to their children as a result. This is a case we've had cases documented of that kind with regard to Bahrain. And then threats from people who are either known or unknown. So often that could be online, on social media, but phone calls as well. And again, often those threats can coincide with the other forms that we're describing. If somebody is tailed physically, they may find that they're suddenly getting messages online about that. I think sometimes when you express, one of these practices, it can seem kind of manageable almost. And one of the things about activists who are subject to these practices is that sometimes they're very stoic people. They have chosen the life of an activist or a political dissident. And so they tend to play this down. They're advocating for people in their home countries who are, doing life sentences in jail. They're stoic people, but it's clear that often they are facing multiple of these practices at once. It has a debilitating effect on their lives, on their families' lives, and it takes a toll. They are on constant alert. And it's very difficult to explain these things to people because it's poorly understood by the society around them. And that then, for others who are not the most prominent activists, creates a really serious chill factor. And this is something that people talk about all the time, about the diaspora groups in this country who, because of what they see happening to others, they decline to take part in anything that might look political, any kind of public participation in life in this country. I heard nationals of the UAE and Saudi Arabia in particular talk about a kind of pervasive sense of control and monitoring of the diaspora by their governments. That could be through apps that they're supposed to sign on to say where they are, or it could be through student societies that they're supposed to do all their socializing through. So really extending through their social life and creating a sense they're under observation. And then you have this other kind of case, which is people who express themselves, use the freedom of expression that is available in the UK legitimately, and then travel unknowingly back to the home country and find themselves facing consequences there. So there is a British national in jail in Saudi Arabia, detained arbitrarily right now, because it seems of a deleted social media post and a friendship with someone who is related to a dissident, a Saudi dissident. There are people on travel bans in the UAE because they went to a seminar in this country and took part in that seminar. in a university. So what, and I just wanted to just before I just talk about the increase in the prevalence, just a quote from one Egyptian human rights researcher who sort of summed this up. I thought, he said, "I didn't come here to this country to stay quiet, but the other day my father called me, who lives in Egypt, and he told me I had to delete my social media post because he was worried. His father's previously been arrested because of his work." So I think that's the sort of chill factor that may be repressing the kind of freedom of expression among these communities. And in terms of prevalence and numbers, it is really, really hard to estimate. And a very few get into the media where there's something dramatic. I think the numbers are likely to be far higher than we assume. What I think we can say is that, by the way, everybody you speak to about this, once you start asking them, they say, "Oh yes, I have a friend and this happened to him. I heard about this guy's case." So a lot of this, because it can feel low level compared to what's happening in the home country, it doesn't surface. I think what you can say is that since the beginning of the 2010s, when the Arab world saw uprisings and protests and a kind of really repressive turn by a number of governments, to some degree the political arena has shifted more to the outside, to the external arena, and so into Europe, into North America, and so the repression has moved there. That's probably the end of my comments.
Thank you. That certainly sets the scene very well for us, and this